Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for giving your time to be with us here tonight for the 7th anniversary of World Electrohypersensitivity Day. And I am joined tonight by my co-hosts. We have, just one sec, let me get them lined up. We have Courtney Gilardi and her daughter Amelia, who many of you know have been working very tirelessly on this issue for far too many years now, and they will share more about their experience here in just a few moments. And the way that tonight will go is we have invited 20 different speakers to join us, and they will be sharing their stories in an almost impossible 2-minute segment. We know that everybody could write more than 1 million words on the experiences they've had with electrohypersensitivity. And the scientists and the doctors who are all working so desperately to help people through this. But they were very gracious to honor my request to keep it to 2 minutes. And the reason why we did that is because our wonderful cable station here in Ashland, Massachusetts, has agreed to take our video from tonight and create 2-minute snippets that we'll then be able to share. And we hope that those will be useful in the work that you do to help others understand what electrohypersensitivity is. So before I turn it over to Courtney and Amelia, I want to give you a couple of updates. Some of you may know that we've been working very hard on legislation here in Massachusetts for over 10 years now. And I just got word today that the bill that we have from Senator Michael Moore, which is Senate 2152, to give everybody the right to opt out of utility smart meters at no fee. The deadline for reporting out has now been extended once again. This is the 3rd extension that they've got until July 31st. So we see that as a hopeful sign, and we want to extend our gratitude to everybody last week who responded to our action item to put this in front of them again before they make their final decision on the bill to report it out of committee this session. So we're hopeful. We remain ever hopeful, because if we don't have hope, well, we just don't have a whole lot. And then I also spoke with Senator Julian Sears' office. He has Massachusetts Senate Bill 155, which would form a commission to investigate the whole wireless issue, much as New Hampshire has already done. And so Senator Sear was not able to be with us tonight, nor was Senator Moore, but Senator Sear sent us this statement to say that Senate Bill 155 and Senate 156 both address the potential harm of electromagnetic and radio frequency radiation by promoting consumer awareness of existing health warnings. The bills aim to allow consumers to make informed decisions around purchasing and using mobile phones and wireless devices, particularly regarding potential exposure risks for children. Given the ubiquity of these devices in our lives, we owe it to the residents of Massachusetts to explore any potential harm created by using these devices and to provide them with the best information possible to make informed decisions. These bills from Senator Sear are now with the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Senator Michael Rodrigues. So please, everybody, send good energy to Senator Rodrigues that he'll see clear to do something very meaningful this session, along with the Joint Committee on Telecom, Utilities, and Energy for the smart meter bill. So that's my update on this. We're going to turn it over to Courtney. We're going to hear a prayer from the minister who gave such a beautiful prayer to us on Sunday night of last week ahead of the Pittsfield court case hearing. And Jenny is going to be here to do that with us again in just a few moments. We'll have Courtney introduce the other speakers after she and Amelia delivered what they came to tell us tonight. And then at the end, I will wrap us up with some additional resources. And before the night is through, I will drop into a chat a document that I prepared with all of our speakers' names. So if you don't catch them on the go around, you will have them, along with any links that they've asked us to share with you. So please stay tuned for that. We appreciate that people want to connect with one another, but we also know that if the chat gets too chatty, people are pulled away and they're not actually listening to what we're presenting tonight. So please be respectful in the chat. At the end of the program, you're more than welcome to include your comments then. Thank you very much, everybody. And with that, I will turn it over to our co-hosts, Courtney Gilardi and her daughter, Amelia. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece, so much for co-hosting this tonight and for that lovely introduction.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Global EHS Day 2024. My name is Amelia.
My name is Courtney.
And we were part of the 17 plus people injured by the cell tower that started transmitting at the top of our street nearly 4 years ago this summer.
We want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here tonight, honoring the voices of those with the invisible illness of electrosensitivity and making our stories, our lives, and our asks for safe housing and policy change and protection visible.
We could not do this vital work without each of you. So first, I want to thank the ones courageous and brave enough to publicly share your electrosensitivity stories. Secondly, I would like to thank our safe tech communities who are forming cohorts and coalitions across the country and are working together with doctors, engineers, physicists, and other subject matter experts to share information, but also to share wins, to build on each other's successes, and to inspire each other to advocate for civil rights of those with EHS, and to raise awareness of all we can do at every level of government, from grassroots to Congress, to grow awareness and make positive change. And third, I'd like to thank our allies, those who are not injured, but who are standing in solidarity with the science, the sick, displaced, and injured. It takes each of us, all working together, to do this vital and life-saving work.
We are honored to join countries such as France, Italy, Germany, England, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, South America, Canada, and so many others in acknowledging the health epidemic caused by the increasing levels of radio frequency radiation and electromagnetic fields from all sources, creating health issues like EHS and exacerbating existing ones.
This fall, I read the story of Maria August, who took her life because she was electrosensitive and could not find a safe place with low RF readings in which to recover. Maria did not want her death to be in vain. She asked 3 things from each of us. 1, to learn the truth about electrosensitivity and the harms of smart meters and cell towers. 2, to learn how to protect ourselves through using safe technology and implementing policies to keep harmful infrastructure off and away from homes, schools, and sensitive areas. And third, to create safe housing opportunities for those with EHS.
Maria's wish was that her death would usher in a new era in which EHS is taken seriously, diagnosed correctly, treated immediately, and prevented widely. The recent Yale Symposium on RF and Pittsfield's mayor's issuing of a proclamation recognizing Electromagnetic Sensitivity Day are all steps in the right direction.
May the actions we take and the awareness we create on Global each day, and each and every day of the year, honor Maria and all those who suffer. May her memory inspire us to take relentless positive action to create change so that no more lives are lost through the shame, stigma, or ignorance of this environmentally induced illness.
To honor Maria's life and legacy and all of the empty chairs representing those who cannot participate in society because of their EHS, and our work towards a more compassionate and just world for those suffering. Before our guests share their testimonies, I'd like to invite the Reverend Jenny Gregg of Cathedral of the Beloved here in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, to start our time together with a beautiful and inspiring prayer that she specifically wrote for our EHS community. Thank you, Reverend Gregg, for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Let us pray. Holy One, this night we gather to recognize electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. And we give thanks for all the hours of advocacy and awareness across the world and this night especially for Amelia and Courtney's work here locally in Pittsfield, as well as the many others on this call that gave way to days of remembrance from all those who suffer from EHS. We pray this night especially for all those who suffer from symptoms and have not yet found their way to a diagnosis. As tonight we, through our presence, exclaim, "You are not alone." We give thanks for doctors and scientists who have documented, written, studied, and validated the experiences of those who have sat before them. And we pray for a day when EHS will become a common understanding and safeguards will be put into place with greater measure. Turn the hearts of those who would rather turn a blind eye to the cries of your people, and strengthen those, especially Scott McCullough and all other lawyers and judges working on this cause to speak truth in love. Help us to co-create a world where radio quiet zones will be made readily available, so that those who are affected can have places of peace and healing as they move throughout their daily lives. In the meantime, as we wait, be with us in times of lament and give us the ability to persevere for a more just and EHS-friendly world. Surround us with your love and bind us to you and a community like the one gathered here tonight that can help us remember that in and through all things, we are your beloved children, as you work with us and through us to co-create a more just and EHS safe world. It is in love's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for the gift of that beautiful prayer to let people know that they are not alone, that they are seen, and that we have allies in our Pittsfield faith community who are creating support and awareness and education and solidarity with those sick and suffering and displaced. So I know you have family commitments tonight, Reverend Greg. We'll let you get to those, and thank you for being on this call and sharing your prayer tonight.
Thank you. My prayers remain with all of you.
Thank you. And with that, we would like to have our first speaker, Shelley Wright, from Canadians Educators for Safe Technology.
Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to share and for that beautiful prayer that we just had. That was lovely. I'm a retired teacher who became sick around wireless devices emitting radio frequency radiation in the microwave frequency range. In the absence of microwave signals, my microwave sickness disappears. Text messages create sharp electrical-like shocks with subsequent head pressure and debilitating migraines the next day. Symptoms can take hours or days to disappear. My proximity to the device, signal strength, and the duration of my exposure have an impact on the severity of my symptoms and recovery time. Determined not to give up the job I loved, I jumped through exhausting and time-consuming political hoops to seek accommodations and reduce workplace barriers. To survive a pervasive toxic access point in my classroom, I felt forced to teach my students in hallways or outdoors. I lost the freedom to circulate around the room. Teaching from the corner of the classroom was restrictive, and marking near stairwells was distracting. I experienced loss of professional development and reduced workplace advancement. I also experienced isolation and limited collaboration with colleagues. I felt forced to take unpaid medical leave and short-term disability to regain my health. As the founding director of Canadian Educators for Safe Technology, CE4ST, I used the International Declaration on the Human Rights of the Digital Child, Tech Safe Schools, and Environmental Health Trust to raise public awareness on the EMF science and risks, as well as superior safe tech practices which protect all children and pregnant staff in schools and at home. CE4ST also promotes more protective cell tower setbacks and accommodations for students, teachers, and staff who are medically or electromagnetically vulnerable or disabled by RF emissions. Vulnerable electromagnetically disabled people require RF-reduced, accessible parks, beaches, trails, and campsites to heal. Compassionate communities can provide safe tech public health policies to create barrier-free RF-reduced wired schools, hospitals, grocery stores, community facilities, and public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story and your inroads into creating safe accommodations so you don't have to give up the job you love. Thank you for sharing your story with us tonight. Next, we have Dr. Mikko Ahonen, who will share a 2-minute testimony.
Yeah, greetings from Finland. My name is Mikko Ahonen. I'm a researcher and PhD. And today I will shortly tell about typical errors in propagation studies and what kind of new sensitivity research would be needed. It is counterproductive to ask research subjects, did you feel the exposure? When, for example, Wi-Fi router is switched on and off. Especially when several research subjects get symptoms with a delay. If this kind of propagation study would be done properly, research subjects would be pre-tested beforehand to know which frequency range and which technology they react at. There are people who react to microwave range of frequencies, but do not react to low-level magnetic fields. And vice versa. To my knowledge, only Professor William Rea's research team in Dallas has done this pre-testing properly. Additionally, there should be a long flush-out period between exposures. All this was forgotten in industry-funded psychological propagation studies from James Rubin and ICNIRP members. Often also research facilities were not clean. There were several chemical exposures and so on. A human being can react both to chemicals and EMFs, even getting similar symptoms. Instead of propagation studies and asking about feelings, better use of money would be focus on bioindicators. In Germany, Dr. Lebrecht von Glitzing with his colleagues has suggested to do simultaneous recordings of heart rate variability, HRV, microcirculation, and electric skin potentials as classification of electrical hypersensitivity, EHS. I personally have been involved in HRV studies led by Dr. Tarmo Koppel from Tallinn, Estonia. In our studies, we have identified one interesting additional measurement item, DC or direct current magnetic fields and their anomalies, especially in buildings, and often these are related to magnetized metal structures. these anomalies have an effect on heart on some research subjects. So all relevant EMF field combinations, AC, DC magnetic fields with microwaves, should be understood. The latest promising research direction is blood and urine molecular biomarkers, developed by Professors Belbom from France and De Luca from Italy. These biomarker tests can be even combined with well-made provocation studies. So, thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. I think it's so important for all of us who feel impacted by electromagnetic fields to know this kind of information, because all of us are so different. Some of us are really impacted by Wi-Fi, sometimes Bluetooth, sometimes it's a cell tower. And so to know the pre-testing exists sounds like it's a much better way to go. So thank you for your research and your information.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Deb Chandler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deb Chandler, and I'm from Massachusetts. I've been using a smartphone since 2008. And years ago, a friend with EHS started asking me to shut off my phone when I was around her. As a result, I started noticing how much better I felt. But even though I continued to reduce my exposures, it was too late. My body had become sensitized. It has become crystal clear that EMFs are the cause of so many of my symptoms that I had blamed on my chronic Lyme disease. I'm a graphic designer by trade, but nowadays I can't do that work. Even using a hardwired Ethernet on my laptop, I get sick. I use dirty electric filters on my outlets. I wear shielded clothing. I shut off the modem at night and mostly keep my phone in airplane mode, especially in my car. When I go out for errands, I feel like I'm in a war zone. There's Wi-Fi everywhere. People are radiating themselves with their phones, their earpods, their smartwatches, their electric cars. The levels of ambient radiation are through the roof. I was forced out of my apartment in April. Now I'm homeless. My house sit for a friend has come to an end. I have not found a place I can afford that has low EMFs. I still plan to create a tiny house village for us EHSers, but I need something for myself right now. The telecom industry is out of control. They are regulated by the FCC, which is a captured agency, which is run by industry insiders. We EHSers are the canaries in the coal mine. Our numbers are rising daily. We are facing a public health crisis like that brought on by big tobacco. It took way too long for that industry to be reined in. Please believe us EHSers when we talk about disabling symptoms. Please educate and protect yourself now, and please support stricter regulations. You may feel fine today, but tomorrow it could be you who suddenly gets real sick. Thank you, and together we will prevail.
Thank you, Deb, so much for sharing your story. And we wish you the best of luck in finding safe housing and starting that safe housing community for all of us. Next up, we have Christine Didario, who is one of the canaries who is so sick that she cannot even use the phone or computer to share her story. So Lori Woden will be reading Christine's story for her. Thank you, Lori, for joining us tonight.
Hi, yes, I'm reading this for Christine. She would like to be able to use a computer or anything, but she can't. She's 41 years old and lives in Massachusetts and is what they call electrosensitive, which she believes is a misnomer. It should really be called electromagnetically injured, or EMI, because how can anyone be sensitive to a toxin? That's like saying cyanide sensitive or fire sensitive. It really is the toxin, not the person. It all started in 2011 when I got an iPhone, she says. It would feel like I had the flu every time I used it. Fast forward to 2021 after they installed wireless where I worked at United Way. Each day I got sicker and sicker until I miscarried my first child. I had to leave my job because it was debilitating. I am still unable to work, go inside public buildings, people's homes or even drive a car without a lightning bolt of a headache beginning with extreme pain that can last 4 days or more. I can't use a phone, a screen, or any electrical appliance, or I won't be able to take care of my child, that I have now. Knowing how to protect myself from injury now, I was able to have a baby successfully recently. I must be content to try making the best of what I can, being in nature fairly close by, taking walks, but life is very lonely and isolated, and I minimize the risk of headaches and other symptoms so I can be there for my baby. I am losing my sense of agency and feel somehow less than human, as I can't withstand what many other humans can. I am in survival mode most of the time and try to concentrate on the joy of my child rather than what life has become. I try to heal, but it is challenging as electricity and wireless radiation are so ubiquitous. It's frightening to think how much stronger it will get as it is added to every day. Compounding this all is that I feel an outcast after being a full participant in life and work all my life. I have always been an extremely healthy person, and without wireless radiation, I'd be living a normal working mother's life. Thank you.
Lori, thank you so much for sharing Christine's story with us. Thank you. It's truly moving. Next up, we have Tim Maurer.
Hello, my name is Tim. I live in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts. About 6 years ago, I hit my head and got a concussion. I wasn't able to do very much of anything: drive, exercise, read, write, use the computer. Lights, sounds, being around a lot of people, pretty much any sense stimulation was debilitating. Computers and cell phones were the worst offenders. Looking at those screens brought on a pain and pressure that felt as if my head would literally explode. After 4 weeks, I began to feel a little better and do a little more, but one day I was writing on my laptop and ignored the pressure a little too long, and zap, I was right back at the beginning. This happened a few times over the course of the year. I'd feel a little better, do a little more, then regress. Until one day I just stopped getting better. Nothing I tried helped, and many things made it worse. I began to fear and wonder if I would be able to survive in this ever-increasing tech world. If I'm honest, I still do. One thing I've gained, though, is a sense of purpose, which helps me to keep going. I wish to heal and help others to heal and live happy lives. When I first hit my head, the only thing that helped, brought any relief, any peace, was sitting by this stream in the woods. I called it my happy place. I would later realize that this was a form of energy healing, just like the Reiki and meditation I practiced, the good EMFs. So now I'm starting a company, a place where people can go to learn about, practice, and receive the healing energies of the world, as well as become aware of, mitigate, and avoid the energies that disrupt our well-being. EHS can be a dark and lonely road, largely because it is not understood, accepted, or acknowledged. But just by writing this, I notice I feel a little more of those things, and that's a healing energy. So thank you for sharing your stories and for listening to mine. Together we can heal and heal this world.
Tim, thank you so much for sharing your story, and it's nice to meet somebody else from Berkshire County who has EHS, and know that you're not alone. We look forward to connecting with you in the future. Thank you for being here tonight. Next up, we have Deb Hodgdon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deb Hodgdon. I'm co-founder of New Hampshire for Safe Technology, and this is my unplanned journey over the past 7 years. In 2017, I was trying to safely come off blood thinners. I also had insomnia, tinnitus, heart arrhythmia, tooth and jaw pain, severe dry eye, facial flushing, dizziness, and blood pressure issues. I had developed intense pressure headaches that felt like my brain was swollen or on fire. I had great difficulty thinking, speaking, and remembering. I even got lost several times in the town I've lived in for nearly 40 years. I did not yet know that it was all related. until we removed the wireless from our home and cars. My health quickly improved. My seemingly unrelated symptoms disappeared as well. Interestingly, the plant in my kitchen that sat there doing nothing for over a year grew 15 inches in just 2 months. That was an eye-opener for everyone in the family. It's much easier to believe what you can actually see. Realizing this is an issue that ultimately affects everyone, I stepped way out of my comfort zone, despite knowing others will certainly think I must be crazy. I held 2 public screenings of Generation Zapped and reached out to many, including legislators. My state rep, Patrick Abrami, was truly exceptional. He actually listened and responded by writing New Hampshire House Bill 522 with State Senator Tom Sherman as a bipartisan co-sponsor. In 2019, New Hampshire House Bill 522 became the first U.S. law addressing technology safety by establishing a commission to investigate the science. The New Hampshire Commission on Health and Environmental Effects of Wireless Technology produced a groundbreaking report in the fall of 2020 with 15 recommendations. This report is a great place to become informed, to empower you to protect yourself, your family, and community by becoming aware and learning how to use technology safely. Thank you.
Deb, thank you so much for your story and for all of the work that you have done in the legislation to move these bills forward. Thank you so much. Next, we have David DeHaas.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Fantastic. I'm a colon hydrotherapist and a naturopathic health coach at Living Waters Wellness Center in Boise, Idaho, and I became president of Idahoans for Safe Technology back in 2020. And as I went down the rabbit hole on EMF exposure, I was aghast at how bad it really is. I have several clients who had symptoms that no one could identify the root cause. In every case, there was a high degree of exposure to electromagnetic frequencies. So I've been involved in the local Republican Party and wrote a resolution for the state convention in 2020 to stop 5G. About half the group were supportive of properly legislating cell towers away from homes. About half thought 5G would give them access to high-speed internet if they lived up in the mountains or way out in the country. Most were simply confused on what any G meant for them and their families. To bring awareness, I began speaking at every local Republican meeting. At one point, I brought an EMF meter, the Sound and Safe and Sound Pro 2, to the meeting. They had Wi-Fi on, so it was pretty easy to show how much exposure was coming at them. That was a big game changer for most in the room. I have a local radio program and invited Dr. Kent Chamberlain and Dr. Martin Paul to speak about electromagnetic frequencies. One of those shows was heard by a local attorney. He reached out to us and said he could help. He has been a great help and is involved now in 3 towers we have in litigation. We sat down with our local officials after the election in 2020 and started educating them on regulations on what was true about what they could use in their local land use policies to stop cell towers. We went before our county commissioners many times to contest towers being located next to homes. The work paid off. We got 1 tower denied and was never appealed. We currently have 3 towers stopped as they go through litigation. For all these towers, we started doing our own EMF measurements to show there was no gap in coverage. We got very precise in how we used our words and targeted the key points. We kept saying the same important points over and over, showing how cell tower companies were being disingenuous with their data. What we learned: show real data on EMF using meters. Take videos with your cell phones. Cell tower companies show colored maps that have no data. They're bogus. It's easy to point out the cellular guys are using smoke and mirrors to get their permits. Real data stops that. People don't like seeing their home's value decline from a tower. We point that out as well. We use meters and show cause of harm using the court documents from the August 13, 2021 decision that went against the FCC. And we are persistent, and that has been our success.
David, thank you so much for sharing your story and how you use your meter and very clear language and the science and the devaluation of homes to keep these towers away from sensitive areas like classrooms and bedrooms. Thank you for all you do and for your story tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next, we have Cece, who will be reading for Allison Teague.
All right. My name is Allison Teague, And I am a former award-winning journalist and former elite competitive skier and an artist. And in 2005, I was exposed to a testing pulse from a new cell tower in Newbury, Vermont. And for 2 weeks afterwards, both my dog and I experienced severe exhaustion and brain fog to the point of not being able to think or to drag myself to the bathroom or to even cook. I worked at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center at the time, and no diagnosis could be found. I recovered, but I then developed cataracts. Within 6 months, my dog died and was riddled with cancer throughout. I was again subjected to bad EMFs in the apartment complex I was living in 2018. I was just 5 feet away from a Wi-Fi router exposure and 12 feet away from smart meters. I was the fulcrum of those two beams, and that burned a hole in my scalp to the point where my hair was coming out in chunks. The cognitive impairments affected all of my memory functions. I couldn't think straight, and I couldn't write anymore. It took me 2 years to realize that my brain had indeed been injured and that my memory and coherence had been affected. It took another 2 years of intense focus and mitigation efforts, which I learned through dedicated websites, reading Arthur Furstenberg's Invisible Rainbow book, and studying the work of Dr. Zach Bush, among others. And housing then became a big issue. I went into temporary EMF-free housing. And for 2 years, I applied sound healing and dietary protocols to the point where I could finally get back to where I could write a little bit again. I am now in a camper living off grid that has very high dirty electricity levels. I have no hope of finding a safe housing situation, and each day is a struggle to get up and keep going. At age 73, I know my body. I've always addressed the source, not the symptom. And right now, radio waves and dirty electricity are rampant. I have to be in and out of supermarkets within 20 minutes, or I can't sit at a computer for longer than 30 minutes, nor can I use a cell phone without both memory issues and exhaustion kicking in. I only just got a flip phone for the first time, and that has reduced signals. I constantly experience tinnitus or ringing in the ears and skin prickles with exposure. I hope for all of us that we can use our wisdom. Wisdom is gained with knowledge, and please know your resources and use them. Thank you.
Cece, thank you for sharing that story. Next up, we have Barb Payne.
Hello, I'm Barbara Payne. I'm a transcriber and proofreader. Due to EHS, I experience pain, illness, isolation, and discrimination. In 2008, I began my volunteer advocacy alongside various organizations and experts, aiming for recognition, prevention, and recovery for everyone, as EHS can severely impact health, well-being, and quality of life. Since 2016, I also volunteer as president of not-for-profit Electromagnetic Pollution Illnesses Canada Foundation. That's EPIC for short. Success. EPIC modernizes awareness about why and how to prevent electrosmog. When I introduce myself and the topic in a brief sentence that includes the word modernize, usually the topic is not disregarded, plus usually I am accommodated, either fully or with genuine, respectful best efforts, especially in business settings or at places that tend to accommodate disabled persons. EPIC's main campaign is Practice Safe Tech and E-Hygiene for People and Planet, because those everyday habits are as essential as practice safe sex and any personal or environmental hygiene. To enable success, persons who have EHS and their caregivers and supporters need to know practice safe tech and e-hygiene habits. For me, in personal situations, I have the most success when I first mention it like this. I've had an electromagnetic radiation injury, so wherever there's electricity, electronics, or wireless signals, those can badly affect my heart, brain, muscles, and breathing. Thank you. Kindness and solutions matter.
Barbara, thank you so much for sharing that language and the success that you have had around being accommodated. That is inspiring for all of us.
My pleasure.
Next up, we have Roger Moller.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Roger Moller. Let me just get to my text. Here we go. I'm a graduate engineer and I've been EHS for nearly 3 decades. Without warning, I became electrosensitive, but it took me 2 years to learn what it was called and a further 2 years to meet others who had also lost their tolerance to electrosmog. There are many predisposing factors in my history, not least of which is that I've worked with telecoms and computers for nearly half a century. But it was sitting next to 2 FCTs all day back in 1997 that determined the future direction of my life. An FCT is a fixed cellular terminal, also called a premicell or a gateway, and it connects to a mobile network. FCTs are typically hidden in office buildings and, when attached to an in-house telephone system, provide enterprise-wide cheap or free calls. When, in 2008, neighbors turned on their new wireless router, within 24 hours, I was forced to abandon my home of over 20 years and flee for my life with only what I could carry. On that occasion, I was homeless for 3 months. The man-made electromagnetic radiation has limited my opportunities and driven my choices for about half my life. For the last 18 years, by carefully using what little tolerance I can accrue, I've worked as a professional EMR investigator at the source of levels known to affect the EHS. But as with gravity, we are all obliged to have an ongoing relationship with electrosmog. In some cases, shielding can be a temporary solution, but avoidance has stood the test of time. My advice: deal with your non-elective exposure using meters, knowledge, and shielding. Address elective exposure by making informed choices and practice good electromagnetic hygiene. Budget your exposure and spend your tolerance to best effect. Thank you.
Roger, thank you so much for sharing your story tonight. We appreciate having your voice here on this call.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ken Gardner, who will be reading for George, who is an Australian, who will not be joining us because of the time change, but Ken has been gracious to share George's story. Thank you, Ken.
Hey everyone, I'm Ken Gardner, a certified building biologist, and I'm reading this statement on behalf of a gentleman whose EHS prevents him from doing so himself. My name is George, and I'm an 87-year-old ex-military microwave expert in Australia. I served in operational communications and taught microwaves for over 20 years. I know the dangers of non-ionized radiation. When I retired in 1980, I was exposed to radiation from my neighbors' ham radios and personal pre-cell phone equipment in their home and cars. My wife insisted on having a cordless phone, and I had no meter in those days to check the radiation. I suffered from microwave illness, which was misdiagnosed as numerous idiopathic illnesses, cause unknown. We moved to an island, and my illness began to heal with no mobile phone technology. When we returned to the mainland, my wife purchased a cell phone, and it felt like ants running all over my body. We later resettled in a retirement village, and the radiation levels began to increase from 2 towers to 7. Then a new tower was installed 600 meters away with 5G emitting at 3.5 gigahertz. The power and signal strength increased 100-fold. In 3 years, 5 residents out of 6 died from brain cancer, and 4 of them lived on either side of our unit. The 5th was my wife. The new tower was the cause. After my wife's death, I painted our unit with shielding paint, covered windows in shielding fabric. I connected a corded landline and disabled all wireless. I reduced the radiation to 20 microwatts per meter squared. I live 24/7 by myself with home care for cleaning and shopping. I can't go outside. The most important thing is to heal your myelin sheaths. Buy healthy food. Demyelination and mast cell activation releases histamine, causes inflammation, leads to oxidative stress, and voltage-gated calcium channel disruption, breaking down the cellular membrane. I took those steps, but 5G and old age have broken this camel's back.
Ken, thank you for sharing Georgia's story with us tonight. Thank you. Next, we have Nancy Perlman.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Perlman, a holistic health coach supporting people with electromagnetic sensitivity to reclaim their health and get their life back. I live in the US working virtually, and I trained at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and have done extensive training about the contributing factors leading to EMS, how to navigate the healing process using healing foods, supplements, detoxing, reduction in exposure, and releasing the fears of EMFs. I was one of those people. I became very ill with EMS 6 years ago. Within days of my wireless provider installing a new modem and booster in my home, a switch was turned on by my body I couldn't turn off. These wireless devices were the straw that broke the camel's back. I was pushed into full-blown EMS, though I didn't know it yet. I was experiencing over 30 intolerable symptoms, including sleeping an hour at a time, skin burning, headaches, heart palpitation, constant buzzing in my nervous system, difficulty swallowing, and an inability to participate in society or have peace in my home. I slept in my basement for 2 years to reduce my exposure at night to help me to heal. I had underlying conditions weakening my immune system, including high levels of toxic heavy metals. Does any of this sound like what you are dealing with? After much research, I realized I had EMS and my doctor confirmed. After EMFs, particularly radiation from wireless devices, haunted my existence. I thought God didn't want me here anymore, and I prayed for answers to have peace again. I found answers, and now I help others. Find me at Nancy Perlman Health. I'm here to give you hope. If you're dealing with EMS, there is a path back to health, and healing is possible. Worldwide, we must create living spaces with low EMFs to help enable healing. The FCC and legislators must finally set exposure levels that are protective of our health. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nancy, for sharing your personal story and your inspiration of finding your way back to health. Thank you. Next up, we have John and Ann Bunner.
Hello, I'm John Bunner. Can you hear me?
We
Hello?
can hear you.
Okay, I can tell. Okay. I'm John Bunner. I was an aviation electronics technician in the Navy, where I studied and worked on radar, radio, and infrared equipment, then worked as a technician, quality engineer, and a manager for over 20 years in the telephony industry. And I worked another 10 plus years in management of other electronic products. My wife had brain surgery, and after being seizure-free for years, she began having multiple seizures. A friend asked if we had a smart meter. We checked, and there was one on our bedroom wall. It was around 18 inches from my wife's head where she slept. The power company stated that the meter only transmitted a few seconds a day. As an engineer, I checked for electronic radiation with a meter, and I found it was pulsing 24/7. These pulses were triggering our seizures. My wife has to be constantly shielded from the waves because they will cause seizures. This includes Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cell phone, and the signals. With the Internet of Things, even my CPAP Bluetooth caused her to have a seizure. You know, I would say, so be vigilant, check for signals frequently. You can't see, smell, or hear them. We relocated to Sugar Grove, West Virginia, which is located in the quiet zone, and this has reduced exposure to these signals. My wife has to be constantly aware of these signals and constantly shielded. It is very hard. Persons with epilepsy, especially children, need to be aware of these exposures. If you have questions or comments, please email me at toomuchemr@gmail.com. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for sharing your story and the lengths that you went to, actually moving to a radio quiet zone in order to help her heal. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Next, we have August Brice.
Hi there, I'm August Brice, and I'm with Tech Wellness, where we bring solutions for living well with technology. And today I have a story of history. In the last year, over 1 million people have watched the very moment that I got EHS. It was Christmas Day, a long time ago, 1991. My daughter found this old home movie and I shared it on Instagram. We're opening presents. My husband gifts me my very first cell phone. It was very modern, Motorola flip. And he says, call your mom. So right on camera, the phone connects and I feel this like lightning, like shock, like it practically jumps out of my hand. And so I get very tentative, like it's going to bite me again. But from that moment forward, I started to research and study EMF. And as a trained journalist, I wanted to dig in and figure it out. But mostly people just called me names and said things about me and looked very puzzled and said, what? No, the government allows companies to sell a device that could potentially hurt people. Well, the truth is, yes, cell phones and the digital devices that followed were never tested for safety as a consumer product. It's stunning, but it's absolutely a fact. And now, with billions of devices around the world, we're exposed to levels of radiation that I'm sure the inventors never dreamed of. More and more people are discovering that they too can sense these EMF. They know they're being impacted, and actually, we're all being impacted. But the people with EHS, we're the canaries in the coal mine, and we're alerting the rest of mankind. It is important, and that's why I started Tech Wellness. So lately, I want you to know, I see hope. People nod their heads when they hear about my symptoms. And hundreds of women have told me that when they turn their Wi-Fi off at night, their children sleep better. And turning off the Wi-Fi, it leads to turning off wireless on phones and on laptops. And then they try safe hardwired connections. Yay. They tell their friends, then they tell the schools, then they tell the city council. And you know what? There's a spark of change and of understanding. Meanwhile, I know that everyone with EHS, we all have different symptoms. Our guide actually lists 25 symptoms, all connected to research. Now for me, my headaches and my numbness and tingling, canopies, I carry a meter wherever I go, phone leashes, but really what we need is less EMF in our environment. And you know what? I'm hopeful because change is in the air.
August, thank you so much for sharing your story and the inspiration of the work that you are doing of educating people, and that spark of, yes, I know somebody now that has EHS, and we're going to know many more people with the densification of this electrosmog. But there's a recognition and there is action, and that's the most important thing that gives us hope. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Next up, we have Brian Stearns.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Stearns from Missouri. I used to casually think of any health dangers from EMFs as basically a conspiracy theory. My degree is in computer science, artificial intelligence, and I've also studied physics, psychology, and medicine on the side. So I always knew that in theory, EMFs could affect the body. I'd just never heard reason to take it seriously. And then I discovered I was sensitive about 4 years ago when I was frustrated at an increasingly severe stretch of headaches, brain fog, insomnia. And I remembered hearing about EHS, and I experimentally unplugged all the many smart home and Wi-Fi devices around the house, and the physical relief was instantaneous and extreme. And I've spent years now experimenting with myself, finding what does and doesn't cause what symptoms. My main symptoms are headaches, but also gut irritation, red spots on my skin, insomnia, restless leg, inability to focus, and blood sugar sensitivity. And I'm a bit of an unusual case in that my symptoms are exacerbated by a genetic disease that I have that causes low blood phosphorus. When my phosphorus is low, my EHS is worse. Now, admitting that one could have EHS can seem daunting, but learning about it has honestly been such a gift from God to me. Now that I know and have learned how to avoid EMFs, I can sleep again. I'm not in constant pain. I can eat normally without overloading my blood sugar or worrying about my gut. Through my experiences, some of my family members have found relief from milder EHS symptoms as well. And I suspect that very many of us out in the world are affected in ways that we just never notice. It's hard to tell how something affects you if you're surrounded by it 24/7. So my advice to everyone out there is have an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And you're the perfect example when people say, oh, you have EHS, you must be afraid of technology. No, a lot of people who have EHS love technology, love having all those smart home devices, and were sold it without being told that there was a possible consequence to using these things and being exposed all of the time. So thank you so much. And you give language to what so many of us feel like in terms of being a human subject experiment, that when we are in these high environments, we have these symptoms, and then we leave and we go someplace without them, like, a nature preserve, or for us, it was a 120-year-old abandoned cottage, and we felt better. And the kids finally slept without nightmares and headaches and nausea. So thank you for sharing your story and giving language to the experience so many of us have. Next up, we have Dr. Paul Héroux.
Hello. I am at the Faculty of Medicine at McGill University, and I was trained in physics, and I've been teaching the health effects of electromagnetism and toxicology for the past 37 years. So I'm an old guy, but I'm an experienced guy. And what I know is that the power and wireless industry have been telling us for years that effects of electromagnetism on health are impossible because it's non-ionizing, it's too weak to heat tissues, and there is no known mechanism by which this could occur. All of these things are patently false. In fact, a fair review of physics points to the fact that all of these effects are in fact inevitable. Non-ionizing doesn't matter because your own body provides the ionization. Too weak to heat tissues is ridiculous because you have, billions and billions of small currents in your body that can be interacted with by external fields. And there is no mechanism. It's ridiculous. Biology has wonderful mechanisms that make us vulnerable to these fields. So how did industry come to that conclusion? Did they actually do their homework when they assessed the situation? And the answer is no. And I can testify to this intellectually because of my qualifications, but also because I was peripherally present when I saw these committees gravitate towards these predetermined conclusions. So maybe the courts will have to deal with that. But this whole situation is humiliating to everyone. It's humiliating to physicists. It's humiliating to public health people. It's humiliating to physicians. And so how do we get out of this? Why does it take so much time to redress this situation? Well, it's very simple. The IEEE has almost 400,000 members to propagate its ideas, whereas we are few in numbers, but I can assure you we have science on our side. But as testified by many scientists I know around the world, science doesn't have a lot of influence on decisions that are made in society unless we press for them. So I hope that Amelia will see justice eventually, but it is a long and difficult process. And I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much for all that you do, for Pittsfield, for Amelia, for all our community, for the EHS community. We couldn't do this work without the physicists and the engineers and the scientists who meet with our boards of health and our city councilors and who write the briefs and explain that science of wireless harm. And I too pray for justice, and that before they are college age and move out, they actually move back into their bedroom. That would be a really nice opportunity to live in their family home before they get too old for it. So thank you. Next up, we have Dr. J.P. Saleeby.
Good evening. My name is J.P. Saleeby. I am a functional medicine integrative practitioner practicing in South Carolina. I have 2 centers, but I also have staff and other providers that see patients all over the United States and internationally via telehealth. I also created the Priority Health Academy in 2016 to train other clinicians and healthcare workers on all things functional medicine, including EMF sensitivity. So how I was made aware of the EMF RF sensitivity was the large number of patients in my practice, especially those with neuroinflammation due to chronic illness such as Lyme disease, mold illness, and other chronic illnesses related. So these conditions from vector-borne infections, recent viral infections, to call. As other speakers have spoke tonight, the number one thing is avoidance. You've got to have a meter, you've got to know your environment, and you've got to mitigate some of these symptoms you're having by avoiding the bombardment of this electromagnetic radiation. So that's the number one thing that I advise my patients. After that, I will sometimes administer some things. So I'm going to talk about that since that's not been a topic of discussion here. But the number one mineral actually I prescribe for patients is magnesium malate, which helps the cell membranes and the cell function by tamping down the calcium flooding that's associated with EMF RF impact on voltage-gated calcium channels, the VGCCs as they're called. So what happens when you have this calcium flood, you've got an increase in free radicals and ROSs and other harmful agents within the cells that rise in number, and they as calcium enters the cytoplasm. So magnesium typically mitigates this process. And there are other agents as well in what we call detoxifying your cells from the ravages of such exposure. I'll mention a few here. So you have dandelion extracts, nattokinase or lumbrokinase, methyl donors in the B complex vitamin class. You have vitamin C, clay and activated charcoal binders, hyssop extracts, and parsley tinctures and valerian root extracts that I usually dose at bedtime. There are other things as well, both herbal and supplement mineral interventions and other things. And I would just advise folks listening out there, the lay public who's interested in this or suffering from this malady, to make sure you find a provider or clinician who's well versed and knowledgeable about this condition. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And next we have Sheena Symington.
Thanks, Courtney. My name is Sheena Symington. I'm the director of the Electrosensitive Society, a nonprofit incorporation. My website is electrosensitivesociety.com, and I help a growing number of people who are disabled by exposure to electromagnetic pollution. I'm also a research associate at the Rose Lab, roselab.com. And for the past 20 years, I've been studying the biological effects of electromagnetic pollution and helping those who suffer from electrohypersensitivity, EHS, or what we also refer to as electromagnetic injury, EMI. I educate the public on the importance of electromagnetic hygiene, and I advocate for those with EHS in order to provide them access to workplaces, schools, medical facilities, and hospitals. Since 2020, I've worked with many hospitals to help them reduce their electromagnetic exposure in order to provide their EHS patients access to their facilities. Some hospitals have included the accommodation of EHS into their official accommodation policies and are ensuring a cleaner electromagnetic environment within their new constructions. For details on how hospitals can accommodate patients who have EHS, please see the accommodation section on my website under the Solutions tab. There is a growing number of doctors who are now able to diagnose this type of environmentally induced disability, and many electrosmog remediation specialists are now trained to help those reduce electromagnetic exposure, which is absolutely critical. I also have a link on my website under Solutions, specifically created for doctors. I volunteer my time to educate about electromagnetic injury to all levels of government, from municipal to federal. And I want to offer my expertise to each of you who need help with advocacy, particularly in educating your government officials and or medical practitioners. So feel free to contact me at sheena@electrosensitivesociety.com. And together we really are making a difference. Thanks so much.
Sheena, thank you so much for all you do from Canada. For all of us around the world, we're all tapping into your expertise for those accommodations. You've given so many presentations to my children's schools, about the issue. And they just need to step into the next piece, which is to bring some action into what they know to be true. So thank you for your good work, because you inspire all of us about what can and should be done.
Thank you.
And that was our last speaker for the evening. Cece will have some closing remarks. And again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your testimonies and stories with us tonight.
Courtney, thank you so very much. We really are so inspired by your indomitable spirit, by your willingness not to just simply walk away. And I see that Godiva Richard also has her hand raised, and she was meant to be one of our speakers. And I'm so sorry, Godiva. Go ahead and unmute and tell us your experiences.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take away my hand. So, hi, everybody. Yeah, I just want to start by saying that I make strange faces because of it's something that I cannot control. So yes, thank you everybody also. So my name is Godiva Richard and I am from Switzerland and Charlemont, Massachusetts. I have been EHS for 14 years. It started in Boston because of a very high exposure of wireless and electrical radiation. I would have died if I didn't understand why I was so severely ill. I understood and healed in incredible ways. Today, I wanted to communicate that all of the EHS should speak up. Don't be shy. Ask for accommodations everywhere and to everybody. If only a few of us speak up, things are not going to change. EHS Day is about that, going in the streets and showing the problem to others. I hope that you can understand me. Okay. Some people might not be so kind with you first, but probably one day they will understand that you were right. Don't be intimidated. Be kind, respectful, but please speak up. Can you understand? Yes. Okay. My husband and I have been very active making art, songs, performances, etc. Some of it made journalists interested in writing about this subject. Don't be discouraged. Do whatever you can, but please express the problem. You can find info about what we do on these two websites, so you will have them from Cece later. So it's a Hilltown Health and PT Theatre Company. You can join the mailing list. Sometimes we have activities without devices for people who live close or in Massachusetts. You can join. Lately, we have been working on creating a nature and art program for 0 to 8 years old without devices. It will start in the fall. My husband has been working with our town, and so Charlemont, our town, has passed a 1-year smart meter moratorium and updated the town cell tower bylaw to be more protective. You could also try to move close to us so we can fight together and keep some places without high pollution.
Godiva, thank you so much for sharing the work that you and Jonathan have been doing together. I am so inspired every day by the theater classes that you teach and the shows that you put on, the films that you make, the legislative efforts, the testimonies, the litigation side of it, and the safe sanctuary of the land, and also working with your town leaders persistently week in and week out, and having that moratorium on smart meters for a year in Charlemont, and also creating really protective, great zoning for those cell towers as well. You show us that if you guys can do it, anyone can do it. So thank you for being incredible role models for the rest of us. We'll hand it back over to Cece.
Thank you so much, Courtney. And again, Godiva, my apologies that I just skipped a beat there. But so nice that you were with us. So in closing, we want to leave you with inspiration and encouragement. There are wonderful resources in our world today that we didn't even have 10 years ago when many of us fell down the rabbit hole here. So what I'm dropping into the chat right now is a compilation of resources that our speakers have put together for us here. And when we release this video in a day or two, we will also include those links in the notes for the video. We also plan to take each one of these talks tonight and separate it into an individual clip. We will make those available in time as well. My local cable station is going to help me to produce those. And we hope that you will use those, all of these materials, in the way that you find most useful. Know your audience, know what their exposures are, and then grab the little videos that pair up with that. So we hope you'll watch this more than once if that's what is useful to you. And in the notes that I just popped into the chat, I wanted to mention that twice a month, I do 2 free public education webinars through Massachusetts for Safe Technology. So don't feel like you need to know everything. I certainly don't know everything, and I've been looking at this for over 10 years. But what I have learned, I have put together into a pretty comprehensive slide presentation that I go through that will help you to quickly connect the dots, that will give you links to resources that you can then delve into and share with others, and bring other people with you. Bring your loved ones, bring your colleagues, bring your schools, bring your town administrators, bring your legislators. We do these webinars for you and those in your community to learn about wireless risks, and safer technology solutions. Our next one will be this Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And my co-hosts this month are from Idaho, and David DeHaas, who you heard from tonight, is my co-host for Thursday's webinar. We did a wonderful half-hour interview with him recently, and I will be sending that out in advance of Thursday's meeting as well. I also want to mention that in addition, and thank you, Dr. Saleeby, for the training that you have put together for healthcare practitioners to learn about these environmental exposures and how to treat them. The EMF Medical Conference 2021 had 24.5 continuing medical education credits available until last July. Once the accreditation period ended, the executive director of the conference, Elizabeth Kelly, took the entire conference, more than 60 videos of world-leading experts, doctors, scientists, building biologists, nurses, and advocates. Anybody can schedule those now into their calendar and watch them online at the EMF Medical Conference at no charge. So you'll find that link in the notes that we dropped into the chat there as well. And I also want to highlight the websites that Patty and Doug Wood of Grassroots Environmental Education have put together. They have toolkits out there for you to take and share with your loved ones, with your schools, with your communities. The first website is called Tech Safe Schools, and they very, in plain language, outline what the health risks are, the legal risks, and most importantly, how we can mitigate this radiation in our schools with very little cost and very little effort, with just a little bit of education and some courage to go against mainstream messaging. Patty and Doug Wood also have Americans for Responsible Technology. If you go to their website, you will find a toolkit where they have put a good sample local zoning ordinance to help you teach your town why it's critically important that we put setbacks in the zoning code so they can't put cell towers and small cells right inside our neighborhoods. They have a checklist you can use. They have, they have real samples of communities where citizens have spoken up and worked with their town. So you can look at, for example, Ithaca, New York, and see what they did. So we have all sorts of resources available for you today. And Dr. Mikko Ahonen, who spoke with us tonight too, he's my partner at what was formerly known as Wireless Education. It's a little nonprofit that we built out of Europe that is now housed with Dr. Carrie Crofton up in Canada. And we're about to relaunch that under the new name of Safer Tech Education. We have literally built a course that can be taken online in about a half an hour to train our schools, to train our workforces, to train our municipalities. So we have everything we need today. What we need, though, is more awareness. So please join us for these free webinars. Take the little course at Safer Tech Education and just help others to come into the fold on this critically important public health issue, because it's not like anybody else knows about it. There's no cavalry coming. If they are, it's going to be years away. So it's up to you and I to continue educating, to continue inspiring, continue connecting with one another, because nobody should feel alone on this journey. So with that, I want to thank everybody, and especially Courtney and Amelia, who have worked so hard behind the scenes to help us bring this event forward, and to all of our speakers and to all of our attendees. It is so heartwarming to be in this village with you. And we look forward to what we're going to do next. So please, everybody, keep learning with us, keep speaking up, and please keep sharing the information that we put out there for you. Take care, everybody, and have a tech safe night.